Thank you, Kyron. And so Kyron alluded to a little bit of the course completion data collection, but before we go forward, I want to see if we can go back a little bit. So Kyron, hopefully you were tracking with your eyes. As Kyron was talking, he was using the acronyms. And so we like to speak CalPADS and we use a lot of acronyms, but if he was saying SDEM, staff demographics, course section completion, that's the CRSE. And so if any of you missed any of the acronyms, the WBLR, work-based learning, you can ask in the chat box if you had. I didn't see any, but it occurred to me, not presenting, but actually listening for a change, how we speak. And so I guess you have it here as well, only the acronyms, but we like to describe the data types as acronyms because we say them so often. So I just, trying to help you with that. Anyway, as far as course completion goes, it is specifically required for grades 9 through 12 departmentalized courses. That would be any course other than State Course Code 1000, right? So even if you have high schools in your LEA, some courses may be State Course 1000. Like sometimes if you were to report independent study, you would use State Course Code 1000. And so you can see the disadvantage of that. You have students who have completed curriculum, students that may be eligible or have met the requirements for this CCI in the dashboard, and you can't report that because you chose to report the independent study with the 1000 as opposed to breaking down each subject as an independent course. And so that's one of the nuances of how you choose to report your data. So it's not too late if you report a fall 1 independent study courses with a 1000, as Kyron said, course completion, CRSE, is not the student course enrollment, the SCSE. And so you can submit those courses as departmentalized courses. And if students were to have met the requirements for a CCI, it would be reported and counted in the dashboard. If it's too late to do that, right, because you have to manage your work, you can do that in your planning going into the next year. You know what's coming. So when we're talking about coalition building, you have to talk to your curriculum folks and say in our master schedule, we don't want independent study to be a 1000. We want each subject to be represented so our students can get credit for the CCI. Project management, you have to set this up ahead of time. You have to know when your master schedules are solidified, how they and when they can be modified, and probably going into fall, this is the time. And so these are a couple of the things that, are required, again, to be successful, because, your administrators are just going to ask you, why are these students not getting CCI credit? And you have to know, I didn't report all these independent study students because it wasn't required, it was a 1000. Just because it's not required doesn't mean it's not in your best interest. And so there was another question in the chat box about, if I don't have any WBLR data, can I certify? And the answer is yes. And by a matter of rules and processing, it will not prevent you from certifying. But there are some measures that are coming from the WBLR that used to be SPED, that most likely, if you have special education students, these students with disabilities, and they are exiting, you may have, and you want to talk to your special education staff, you probably have these. And so one of the documents, if you've downloaded the PowerPoint, I'm gonna drag it in front of you. Kyron showed you a metric, it was a couple of years old, it talks about prepared and approaching prepared. This is the updated version of that. And it's in the notes if you download the PowerPoint. And you can see that you have the transition classroom work-based learning experience. And we'll talk about the different work-based learning types later, but most districts that have students with disabilities that are grades 9 through 12 are going to have some of these students. And you want to talk to your special education staff to see if you have any of these students that meet this measure, right? Those are definitely measures that are going to be included that have been moved from the special ed file into the WBLR. So just because you're not, and we'll talk about where the data comes from and where it came before, or where it was housed before, but these are some of the things that you want to be aware of. You probably have at least one or a couple students that have data. So just keep that in mind. All right, so again, that was a lot of talking before we got started. Sorry, Kyron. Course completion data is required for students in departmentalized courses 9 through 12. It is optional for grades 7 and 8. Of course, those would be departmentalized courses in grades 7 and 8. If you choose to report those grades 7 and 8, only grades are required. For all 9 through 12 students, grades, credits attempted, credits earned, and Carnegie units are going to be required. Keep in mind that course completion is also used to identify CTE participants. So your completers are submitted in a dedicated file. However, those students that completed CTE courses are going to be identified as CTE participants, and that comes from the course completion file as well, or that course completion data set. And so some of the key attributes that you'll find in the CRSE or course completion file used in end of year 1 is the course content, okay? And so that content is described and determined from the CalPADS code set. Specific state course codes are mapped to specific content or content areas. So your CTE courses are in the range of 7,000 to 899. Any CTE course has to be given that state course code. Sometimes we see some CTE courses are also IB courses or AP courses, and there's a cross-reference that is talked about in the data population. There's a field that allows you to code both, but you have to report those with the state course code in the CTE range. Your college courses, the information reported for college courses that you're going to use on the dashboard is a bit different in end of year 1 than fall 2. It is very specific for your college courses that you use the appropriate state course code. It will say college credit math, college credit English, college credit other, college credit science. And so we'll show you this in the coming slide. And then your leader military science course has a specific state course code as well. Your college courses that are CTE courses, right? Those that students get dual credit or college credit, you want to use the course instructional level code or the non-standard instructional level. That's 23 for college credit, 24 for dual enrollment. In terms of the CCI, only CTE courses have a benefit in using the non-standard instructional level code of 23 or 24. Any other subject area, you have to choose the college credit course code. And then high quality CTE courses, whether it's part of a pathway and taught by a CTE credentialed teacher, you know, those examples of that would be probably your CTEIG funded courses. And then you have to also keep in mind that your other CTE attributes come into play because we are using this data for Perkins reporting. You know, who is the course provider is required, whether it's the district or an ROP, ROC. Is your CTE course articulated with a higher level or college institution? These kind of things are required with and used. So that's not just something you want to populate because it's required. You want to be able to report the data as accurately as possible. And if your CTE course is articulated with the college institution, you want to be able to indicate that as such in CalPADS. And so when we were talking about your college courses, and if you have the slide printed out or if you've downloaded it, I did hide a few slides. The data population is described extensively in a recorded video. It was a prerequisite for this course. So I don't want to, and because we're trying to manage time, I'm not covering those slides, right? If you have questions, you can ask, but I did hide a few slides. So if you're following along, it may not be in sync with what you have locally. So you can see that you have your state course codes here, right? And you can see that it says college credit course, visual arts, dance. These subject areas are the, they kind of align with the UC CSU A through G requirement subject areas. And so you have your college credit. So if you have a student taking statistics in college, it's just going to be 9273 mathematics. You may have another student taking algebra 2 in college. It's still going to be 9273. What matters is that it's college mathematics, not the subject matter, like if you were to have a Algebra 2 student and a pre-calculus student in your district, right? It's all mathematics. So that's the same with all your college courses. You can see that military science has a dedicated state course code 9373. And then again, to reiterate, all of your CTE courses are going to be reported in that designated range. And if they are college, if they're aligned with college and provide students college credit, you're going to use 23 or 24. And so after you establish your courses that your students are completing, and remember, Kyron said it's for the entire year, for official grading periods, it's very specific, right? So for fall 1 and fall 2, we had Census Day. Data was relevant of October, the first Wednesday in October, maybe it was the 7th this year. And so only the students that were, the teachers, the students enrolled in courses were reported then. For end of year, it's any student during the entire academic year. For end of year 1, those students who have completed official grading period. So if you have trimesters, you're going to have, 3 distinct collections for each student. If you have semesters, they're going to be 2, right? Semester 1, semester 2. The only thing we exclude is summer school courses, right? There's no reason to report summer school courses. And so those students completing, and it really helps you if you think about official grading periods, you're going to get cert 99 errors for all your students until you submit course completion data. For students that were enrolled a week, 2 weeks, and then transferred or disappeared or something happened to them, whatever the case may be, you probably don't have grades for them. They were enrolled, CalPADS is going to identify it, tell you you have a warning. You just have to be able to verify the reason why this student doesn't have grades. Is it a mistake on my part, or was this a short enrollment and the student does not have grades? And so just that's the significance of the official grading period. But as far as once you have submitted your courses, you're going to submit the completion information of those courses. That's the SCSC, that's the student course completion. And so important key element is the grades. And there's not much to it, right? Other than you need to know that it's alphanumeric or special character. So there's no limitations if you have a non-standard grading, other than it can only be 3 characters, right? So if it's 100, 90, 80, that's your grading scale, that's fine. If it's A, B, C, or D, F, that's fine. If it's AA, BB, CC, CD, whatever it is, that's fine as well. Credits are pretty easy. However you award students credit in high school, you report credits earned and credits attempted, right? And then Carnegie Units is more standardized. It was a couple years now that we've been collecting data on Carnegie Units, and I believe that your student information systems are responsible or do the calculation. Generally speaking, one Carnegie unit represents 120 hours of class instruction for one subject. Typically, this is a whole year of instruction. So a course that takes the entire year usually is one Carnegie unit. Those are usually are courses that award 10 credits for the entire year, right? Those usually are like math, English, science. Those courses that may only be a semester or a shorter course, those courses that typically give you 5 credits a year would be half a Carnegie unit. So when you're looking at Carnegie units, if you're unfamiliar, they're usually in increments of 1 and 0.5. And then if you're trying to understand it, that's generally the way it goes, right? So I think I remember I took econ that was only 1 semester of a course, and I didn't have to take a second one. So I think that would be a 5 credit course. And that probably would have been, if they were doing this back in the day when I was going to school, collecting Carnegie units, 0.5. And then we also want to know if the course that your student completed meets a UC or CSU admission requirement, which one that is. And so they're coded A through AG or A through G, and they have the different subjects. So we talked about codes a little bit. The documents that you would use if you have questions about codes would be the code set. And so I just had it downloaded already. And if you're doing daily work in CalPADS, you probably should have it ready. I use the tabs at the bottom to cycle through, and hopefully this will work. I try to use an abbreviation. Let's try. Well, that won't work, but I know the code. We could try that.
So what if you look at the CFS field, Nate?
Yeah, that would help, Kyron. Thank you.
Let me
That's
just
where we
have
should
a-
have started, right? It'd tell us what to look for. Yeah, I have the CFS here. And we have the student course section, and it tells us every field, and they have a number, it's matched.
Mhm.
And I'll scroll down to the UC-CSU admission requirement code. And so see college code set college admission requirement.
No
So
wonder we couldn't
yeah.
find it.
And so, you know, I have a theory that I'm not going to share with you all why the field has a different name than the codes. But CalPADS is old, and it was developed by many different people at once. So I'll leave it at that. So here are our college admission requirement code used for the UC-CSU field, but you can see you're mapping those. When you say A through G requirements, these are determined, you know, by the university system that we have. And if those courses have the curriculum that prepares the student for these courses, you know, for what they're going to take in college, you would map that, and then you would see that the student meets this, right? Again, this is all done when you're, you know, doing your master schedule. You're identifying what courses meet UC-CSU requirements. And then as your students enroll in these courses and receive a successful outcome, this should be automated by your student information system. But this allows you to see and map different elements. And it gives us an opportunity to kind of fumble through the documents and show you, you know, some of the relevancy and how they would use to shortcut information. So here you have the different codes. And although I made a mistake, thank Kyron for jumping in, because using the CFS really helped me identify the code that I needed. But I don't see any questions, but as far as the pertinent data coming from the course and the student course completion files, that is it. Again, Kyron can, there's a data population video on the YouTube page. I'm sure we will reference the data population training later.